On today's show, I am going to tell you how Uber and Lyft are killing your grandparents and what it's like to actually live in the city of Minneapolis right now. But please take the following 3 seconds to subscribe to my channel. 1, 2, 3. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Oscar Bonner Show. He talks about stuff, some of which he knows. Business, culture, family, and other. Consider him your middle-aged brother. Or not. It's up to you. Here's Oscar!
Welcome to the Oscar Barnes Show. I'm your host, Oscar Barnes, and today is episode 3. How Uber is killing your grandparents and what it's like to be in Minneapolis right now. But first, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Can I ask you something? Do you feel that the world is more stable or less stable than it was a year ago? Less stable? Me too! You win a prize. What's the prize you win? I don't know. I think 2026 is going to be a real turkey. And if you want to know more about what I think, check out episode 2, my 6 predictions for 2026. I already got one right, and that's the quagmire we're heading into in Venezuela. Sweet. You know Uber and Lyft. Those are the total strangers whose cars we get into when we are at our most vulnerable. Whether or not we've had too much to drink, landed in a city where we don't know our way around, or when we've just come out of surgery and the anesthesia hasn't worn off, but the healthcare industrial complex needs to make more money on another patient, so brother, you're getting discharged and we got you an Uber. Here's the thing, America is getting older. Senior citizens are defined as people aged 65 and older. Every day, 11,000 Americans become seniors, but there is a birth rate of only 10,000 new babies per day. This imbalance means that 1 in 5 Americans will be seniors in 2040, and 1 in 4 Americans will be seniors in 2060. I can hear you say it, Oscar, that's really neat, but what does that have to do with Uber and Lyft? Patience, dear friend, patience. Today, 1 in 4 seniors no longer drives. 1 in 2, that's half, do not have reliable transportation on any given day. This leaves a tremendous opportunity for any transportation company, be it a taxi service or a non-emergency medical transportation service, to fill the growing need of senior transportation. So why don't Uber and Lyft just handle all transportation for all seniors all the time? Because there are 2 things that Uber and Lyft really suck at when it comes to seniors. There are 3 things that Uber and Lyft really suck at when it comes to seniors. Number 1, the apps are useless for a generation that really isn't that tech savvy. Your grandparents might be savvy enough to use a smartphone and an app, and if they are, good for them. But they are in the minority. With regards to smartphone ownership alone, 65% of seniors own a smartphone. That's great, right? No, I said 65% own a smartphone, okay? My 76-year-old mom owns a smartphone, and do you know where she keeps it? Nor does she. Not a clue. When she does find it, the battery is dead. When she charges it, she forgets the passkey. Catch my drift? Amongst all seniors, only about 10% are actually tech savvy enough to order an Uber or a Lyft via an app. Now, to each company's credit, they now offer a way to order a ride via telephone, but it's still a little more complicated than it should be. Number 2, the drivers. Oh my God, the drivers. Is it going to be Ricky, the 26-year-old burnout who reeks of booze? Or is it going to be Daisy, the ultra-Christian who refuses to give any brown people a ride? Just about anyone can become a driver for Uber or Lyft. And there is 0 training in dealing with seniors. This is important because seniors have a lot of issues. If you didn't know it, 95% of seniors have at least one chronic disease. 70% of all seniors have a disability, and 15% suffer from depression. And even though seniors make up only 17% of the U.S. population, they account for 20% of all suicides. You think Ricky gives a crap? You've got 5 minutes to meet me on the curb or I'm out of here, Pops. Now then, Uber offers Uber Health and Lyft has Lyft Silver as ways to brand their regular service into something it's not, a type of non-emergency medical transportation that would make you believe that you can trust Uber to get your granny to and from her appointment. Then they try to make us believe that there is a special Uber or Lyft driver qualification in which they are trained to help people with walkers or wheelchairs, etc. As if they get granny from the living room, bring them down to the car across town, and check them gently into the reception of the doctor's office. This all is a bunch of hogwash. I know because I used to own a non-emergency medical transportation company myself, and I signed up to be an Uber Health driver for a competitive analysis. Guess what? There is no special training. There is no wheelchair van, and as much as we want to believe that Charles, a registered nurse just picking up a few extra bucks driving for Uber Health, is going to be the one to pick up your granny, he's not going to be. You know who's coming? Ricky. That's who. But now he's got a vape in his mouth, and the grape stink is going to set off Granny's allergies again. But it's not the grape vape that's going to kill your granny. This leads me to the third reason why Uber and Lyft suck at helping seniors and how indirectly they are killing your grandparents. Uber and Lyft call themselves TNCs, Transportation Network Companies. This is a new category of regulated transportation in which the leadership is decentralized. Whereas a taxi service or a non-emergency medical transportation company tend to have a central HQ and regional service, think of a mom and pop outfit that has a handful of NEMT vans and an operational radius of 50 miles. A TNC can have drivers and cars anywhere at any time. Also, TNCs can hire independent contractors to be drivers. This allows the business owners to avoid common pitfalls with having W-2 employees. This category, called TNC, was created by Silicon Valley lawyers to fall outside of the traditional setup when it comes to licensing a new transportation company in any given state. That's right. These lawyers had to go state by state to lobby the politicians to allow them to create a new category called TNC in their state. But can you name any other TNC other than Uber and Lyft? Nor can I. Nor can anyone. And here's why. The lobbyists, while lobbying in each state, did something remarkable. They convinced the state legislatures that TNCs are just so new and tech-savvy and complex that, well, we're worried that small-time players might pop up and start underfunded rival companies and screw things up and somebody might get hurt. So let's keep the cost of starting a TNC pretty high to eliminate any risk of competition. And they did. Case in point, in my home city of Minneapolis, if I want to start a taxi service, I need to pay licensing fees amounting to about $3,000. If I want to start a non-emergency medical transportation service, which has a much higher level of regulation given the complexity of the work, that also costs about $3,000 to get started. But if I want to start a TNC to compete with Uber and Lyft, I need to pay licensing fees amounting to $46,000. Now, I know what you're saying. Minneapolis is kind of effed up right now with a communist city council and fraudulent Somali daycares. Yes, that is true, but all of that has nothing to do with Uber and Lyft because these fees were issued about 10 years ago. I am happy to report now that in 2026, it sounds like the city council is going to lower the cost of starting a TNC in Minneapolis from $46,000 to only $12,000. So it's only 4 times the cost of starting a taxi service or an NEMT company. Of course, each state and municipality are different, but across America, the costs of starting a TNC is multiple times higher than it is to start a different type of transportation company. The most unbelievable example of this is in Colorado. Get a load of this. In Denver, if I wanted to start a taxi service, it would cost between $500 to $1,000. But if I wanted to start a TNC, it would cost $111,000 annually. Uber and Lyft collectively have lobbied governments across America to make it so expensive to start a TNC that most entrepreneurs are priced out of trying. This allows Uber and Lyft to pay their drivers crap wages. And then when the drivers go on strike, Uber and Lyft threaten to leave. And then the city gets involved, something happens under the table, and everybody's working again. So how does this kill your grandparents? Well, first of all, if you trust your grandparents to use Uber Health or Lyft Silver and the driver is only going to make $8 for the trip, then your grandparents get $8 quality of service. That is not what you want for your loved one if they have a walker or any type of special need. They'll get kicked to the curb, just like the rest of us, by Ricky. But more importantly, the high cost of entry for competing services discourages entrepreneurs from starting TNCs, be they a national or a niche service. This could be a TNC that has a phone number for your grandparents to call. It could be a TNC that only services people locally or has a designated client list. It could be a TNC focused solely on seniors. But to recoup $50, $60, or $100,000 in annual fees just to get started, you would have to deliver thousands of rides. And thus, as the nation gets older and seniors drive less and less, they cannot get to the doctor regularly. No-show rates for doctor's appointments amongst the over 65 crowd average about 50%. And 30% of the time, it's due to a lack of transportation for the senior patient. For a demographic, 90% of which has a chronic illness, preventative medical appointments are critical. If a senior with a chronic illness misses 2 consecutive preventative appointments in a row, their chances of dying within a year skyrocket by 40%. Even aside from medical appointments, there is a loneliness epidemic amongst seniors. They simply aren't getting out, not even to go to the grocery store for some basic human interaction and a good feeling of autonomy. Chronic loneliness has the same effect on life expectancy as smoking 3 packs of cigarettes each day. This stranglehold that Uber and Lyft has on the competition is actually indirectly strangling seniors. So what can you do about this? Well, every riot starts with a whisper. Get the word out. Call your local elected official. Chances are your elected official came to office long after these rates were lobbied, and they might not even know the problem exists. It's probably a good time for me to ask, because I haven't asked yet, but are you living the dream? Is it your dream? And if so, what are you doing about it? Hopefully, you're not getting sucked into rage bait. If you are, please put your algorithm down. Your algorithm is not your friend. It is designed to make you a narrow-minded twat. And you don't want to be a narrow-minded twat, do you? I didn't think so. And isn't it funny that I'm asking you to put down your rage bait, but I'm about to talk about what's actually happening here in Minneapolis? Well, as you know, I live in Minneapolis, not the suburb, the big scary city. And we've had a heck of a few weeks. Did you see what I did there? I used the word heck of a, because that's how the rest of the world thinks we talk, don't you know? Anywho, unless you live under a rock, you've heard that we've had some major fraud here. And if you do live under a rock, do you have room for one more? The fraud here is a big deal, and it's not being ignored, but it's not necessarily being reported correctly. Okay, the right-wing penis wrinkles are saying that the state government blew through our $17 billion surplus to give to Somalis who then funded al-Shabaab. But I don't think all $17 billion went to al-Shabaab because the Department of Transportation just salted I-35, so at least we still have some salt money. Meanwhile, the left-wing vag flaps are too afraid to point fingers at minorities for fear that they will be perceived as racist. So even if these liberals see these Somalis dipping their little tiny hands into our purses, they're not going to say a thing. They're just going to turn a blind eye and look the other way. Wouldn't it be great if the penis wrinkles and the vag flaps could come together on something? As for Democrats, I think the party has gone far too left, and I don't want to be a part of it. I'm also not quite old enough to be a fascist, and the red MAGA hat makes my resting bitch face look worse than it already is. Excuse me, I digress. There is fraud here, and lots of it. and it just cost Governor Wallace his job. How much fraud? We don't know yet. Was it just the Somalis taking the free money? Nope. No. This was equal opportunity thievery at all levels of state government by a wide variety of people, Catholics and Lutherans. The Somalis are just taking the brunt of it because, if I'm being honest, 35 years after guys who look like me voted to bring them here to save their lives, a lot of them still no speak a English. For contrast, this is unlike the Southeast Asian Hmong population, which we brought here after the Vietnam War. They integrated gracefully. They work their asses off, they own the best restaurants, and they are a boon to Minnesota culture. There are about the same number of Hmong in Minnesota as there are Somalis, but you never hear about their Hmong because they're too busy working. And as if the fraud weren't enough to deal with, we now have 2,000 federal agents in Minneapolis who are rounding up anyone who is any shade of brown, including Norwegians who spend too much time in the tanning booth, for a citizenship that prides itself on humility and minding our own business. This is a tension we do not like. As you know, a couple of days ago, an ICE agent shot and killed a 37-year-old white woman. That shooting was about a mile from my house as the crow flies. And this morning, soon after, the partisan headlines read as follows. Fox News, left-wing loony runs down ICE agent, gets shot. NBC News, victim of ICE shooting was protecting her neighbors. Al Jazeera, has anyone seen our oil shipment from Venezuela? What wasn't in the news was that agents about a block away from the shooting were staking out at an elementary school. One of their tactics is to wait for the elementary school to get out at the end of the day, and they follow the brown children to the brown parents and then make arrests. We are Minnesotans. We are all for law and order, but these tactics are barbaric and do not have a place in our community. You probably heard Mayor Fry at the news conference. He is a little twerp, and once again, he allowed his emotions to get the better of him, and he seemed very weak. But he is right that crime across the board in Minneapolis is down, and 2,000 agents are overkill. Let's face it, when you put 2,000 in crappy hotels during a time of the year with bad weather, surrounded by people who don't want them here, surrounded by a government that won't support them, they probably don't feel very good. They're probably pretty pissed off, and they still have quotas to cheat. Needless to say, an underground resistance has already started to protect the community from unnecessary force. I can't tell you of the tactics, but I've seen them, and they look like they were well thought out and probably developed in other cities across the country. As a law-abiding citizen and someone who has reverence for those in law enforcement, I am afraid that some of these ICE agents are going to get killed. Think about it. The governor doesn't want them here. The mayor doesn't want them here. The citizens don't want them here. And it will be just a matter of time until some disenfranchised young man picks up his AR-15 and turns an ICE agent's head into a canoe. Don't believe me? It can happen. I live 10 blocks away from the Annunciation school shooting. There are plenty of violent liberals in our state of hockey, and remember, they burned this place down just 5 years ago. In sum, it is a very stressful time here. It feels like it did right after George Floyd's death and before the city was set on fire. What doesn't help is that most of the pundits on both sides get it wrong because most, not all, but most, are too lazy to come here to find out what's actually going on, especially in the winter. So, please, let's make a deal. I won't tell you what's happening in your neck of the woods if you don't pretend to tell me what's happening in my neck of the woods. And most of all, to the country boys on YouTube who have never been to Minneapolis, who are too afraid of Minneapolis, please don't tell me how to fix Minneapolis. That is like a vegan telling me how to cook my steak. All that said, I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you know that you are not alone. Whatever it is you're going through, somebody has gone through that before and has come out the other side okay. So hang in there. Most of all, remember that you are loved. People love you, except for ICE. They don't care about you. Until next time, please subscribe. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
That was the the Oscar Barnes Show. We hoped you learned something that you didn't know. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Oscar wants this podcast of his too.